Good evening, everybody. If I could call the meeting to order, and good evening to anybody who may be following us on our YouTube channel. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, I'm Leader of the Council, and I'm Chairman of the Cabinet. If we go straight through the agenda, I will dispense with any ordinary announcements because there are no members of the public present. I can see that every member of the Cabinet is present, so there are no apologies. And can I ask, are there any declarations of interest coming before this meeting, colleagues? None indicated. Are the minutes of the last meeting dated the 14th of October agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And I can confirm that there are items of business in both Part 1, which is the public, and Part 2, the private part of the meeting. We will break at the end of the Part 1 agenda to break the YouTube link. So we will move straight into the meat of the meeting, please. And agenda item 5, the report from the former Residents Education and Environmental Services Policy Overview Committee. And we're joined by Councillor Bridges, the former chairman of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, Cabinet. As the chairman of the now retired Residents Education and Environmental Services Policy Overview Committee, it gives me great pleasure to present this report to Cabinet, which details the committee's review of Hillingdon's Adult and Community Learning Service. The review began in November 2020 and progressed throughout 2021, with the range of the service offered being highlighted. The service includes courses for adults with learning difficulties and disabilities, community-based courses that engage residents facing particular disadvantages, education, digital skills, and business courses focused on improving learner employability. The service also offers vocational learning courses for personal development, and in addition to this, the service support for mental health and emotional well-being was of particular interest given the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. During the committee's information gathering and call for evidence sessions, a wide range of views was received, including those of Hillingdon Council officers, learners and representatives from other local authorities. Members were particularly interested in understanding how the service had adapted to ensure service continuity throughout the pandemic. Based on the evidence received, including the most recent Ofsted review and the service's own annual self-assessment, it was apparent that the service had been performing well. Our recommendations therefore focused on how to make further improvements to promote residents' awareness and broaden participation, together with ensuring that the service remained agile to learner needs in a post-COVID world. On behalf of the committee, including those past members involved in this review, I would like to thank all of the witnesses that participated and offer our sincerest gratitude for their significant and valued contribution. And I therefore recommend this review to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Leader. So I'd like to obviously propose agenda item 5, the review by the former Residents Education and Environmental Services Overview Committee in connection with the Hillingdon Adult and Community Learning Service. The Adult Education Service is a popular service and one of value to our residents, providing a broad range of courses, as which Councillor Bridges has just outlined. Also, I'd like to add that during the recent pandemic, adult learning has had to creatively adapt its delivery offer with online learning for those who required a qualification status for work or certified education courses, as well as personal development courses. The service continues to offer a blended service now moving forwards and face-to-face classes in lots of different venues across the borough, including the Brookfield Centre and also other community settings. Having recently spoken to some of the service users in adult education, it became quite clear that it empowers users, giving them the confidence to change their job, provide professional qualifications to increase their earning capacity, changes how they see educational benefits for their children, and offers opportunities to inspire them to make positive changes in their life. And that came out very clearly in my conversations with them. So this evening the recommendations are on page 21 and 22 of tonight's Cabinet papers. Recommendation number 1, that the Cabinet recognises the good work and improvisation of the service during the recent COVID pandemic, as I have just alluded to. Recommendation 2, that the service is rebranded, and I actually really like the idea of actually calling it Hillingdon ACE, although some people may feel it a bit corny. I like the idea of it. Recommendation 3, that the service continues with the new ways of working, as I have just explained as well. Number 4, that officers continue to lobby the GLE. It became very clear to us during the course of the review that the funding that comes into Hillingdon is far lower than other local authorities within London and Greater London. So we will continue to see how we can change that. And recommendation 5, that the council reviews the oversight and scrutiny, whereby we provide an annual review to the scrutiny committee so that we're getting positive feedback and obviously scrutiny. Therefore, I move this recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Bridges, thank you very much for your leadership of this committee and the work. Please take my thanks back to the members. This has been interesting read for me. I found the Appendix 63. I'm a numbers person, quite impacted, because it tells me in quite bold numbers the people that we are reaching, the difference that this service is making to individuals' lives in enhancing their skills, which enables them to achieve more fulfilling and successful lives. And that is a great news story. But an aside from the recommendations, what I've also picked up here, and I know that we're working on elsewhere, is the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on our most vulnerable residents. It is they that had the greatest adverse impact as a consequence on their learning, and it is something that I know that we are picking up in our recovery programme, looking at how we help these more vulnerable people to recover from COVID. I thank you for the work. Colleagues, are these recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on, please, to agenda item 6, the Hillingdon Housing Strategy. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Leader. The Hillingdon Housing Strategy 2021-26 is returning to Cabinet, the draft having been agreed in July, and it has been subject to a consultation. There is an error in the report on page 114 where it states the consultation period was 1 week. It should have been 10 weeks. So apologies for that one. The full strategy is Appendix B of your Cabinet papers tonight. The strategy has had some amendments following consultation, and it sets out an ambitious housing strategy for the next 5 years around 5 strategic priorities. Place shaping, and that's something we haven't done a great deal of in the past, but we do see we will need to do more of in the future. Increased access to affordable housing, leading on improving housing standards, and that's across the rented and social sector. Embracing the new social housing charter, which will impose new obligations on the council, and supporting independent living. The strategy, once it is agreed by Cabinet, needs to be adopted by the full council, and that is planned to happen at the January council meeting. The report on page 109 has 2 recommendations: to consider the outcome of the consultation and recommend that the strategy is adopted by council. I move.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. This is quite a weighty document. It shows the amount of work that's gone into it by the officers. Please take thanks back to them, for the officer team, for the great piece of work. Colleagues, are these 2 recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 7, the monthly council budget monitoring report. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Leader. This is the budget monitoring report for month 6, which is as at the 30th of September 2021. And I'm pleased to tell Cabinet that the financial position, our financial position, continues to be strong and stable. And there are now encouraging small signs of improvement as the financial year progresses. If we take a look at the General Fund revenue account, our underspend against budget now stands at £380,000, and that's an improvement of £12,000 on month 5. Our exceptional pressures arising from COVID-19 for 21-22 are now projected at 18.7 million, which is slightly lower than the previously reported 18.8 million. Against this, we have agreed central government funding of 21 million, and indeed over and above that, we have 10.1 million of earmarked reserves which were allocated at the beginning of the year, and of that allocation, 8.6 million remains. Our programme of savings for 21-22 is making good progress. Of the 10.4 million savings projected for the year, 7.1 million are either banked or are well progressed for delivery by the year end, and a further 2.3 million is in early stages of delivery. Our position with the dedicated schools grant is unchanged from last month. However, we are making very good progress in our discussions with the Department for Education, and it is confidently expected that we will see this lead to a programme of repayments of the capital which we have put in to support the deficit. Our housing revenue account continues to report a close adherence to budget, with a forecast surplus of £76,000. I therefore move recommendation 1 within Part A of the report, which is set out on page 154. Part B of the report on page 178 sets out recommendations A to G, which all have financial consequences and are fully explained. But I would in particular wish to draw Cabinet's attention to recommendation F, which is the award of a contract to PwC for £325,000 for the provision of consultancy services in relation to our work which is going on with the Department for Education on the dedicated schools grant. I so move. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you much, Councillor Goddard. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, Hayes Regeneration, compulsory purchase powers. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Leader. The Hayes Regeneration project is an exciting project that we're all happy to move forward, and this matter, the generality of it came before Council in July, at which point the decision was made to move ahead to Cabinet in July. This is a step in that process. The authority to exercise compulsory purchase powers, in brackets, if needed, is what should be said. There are ongoing negotiations with a lot of people living on those estates, which we expect mostly will be resolved satisfactorily. But this is, if you like, the backup to ensure that the redevelopment can go ahead. It's a necessary step. You can see from the 13 recommendations on page 184 and 185 that the Borough Solicitor is going to be a busy man if needed, as his name is mentioned in almost all of those recommendations. It's a very straightforward technical matter that we need to move forward with, and I so move.
Thank you. Colleagues, the recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We now are turning to part 2, which is the private part of the meeting, and we are therefore breaking the link. Thank you very much. Good night to those following us on YouTube.